Greetings. The Adrian Dominican Sisters welcome you to a presentation of a sister story. I am Sister Peg O'Flynn, and today we're having a conversation with Sister Rosa Monique Peña, who is talking to us from Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. So welcome, Rosa Monique.
Thank you, Peg.
Yes, it's nice I think this is the first out-of-country interview that I have done. So special welcome to you. So this is your story, and you were born and raised in Santo Domingo, correct?
Yes, I was.
Yes. All right, so let's start right there where you began, and you're back there again, and tell us about your family, your upbringing. You know, what was life like? I know you're full of life yourself. You're a delight. So I know part of that comes from your upbringing. So let's have you begin and tell us about Rosa Monique.
Well, yes, I was born here in the Dominican Republic, and I am the second of four. I have a brother older than me. Actually, we are Irish twins.
Okay.
We are only 10.5 months apart.
Ooh, okay.
Yes, my poor mother. And I was born in a very difficult time. We had a dictatorship that lasted forever, it seems. And although my family never spoke about it, we couldn't. You know, my father was very involved in revolutionary activities because he tried to end this dictatorship. But at home, my mother was very cautious not to involve us into the conversations. That was good. We had a very lovely childhood. Close to my house was the church. In fact, I would wake up in the morning with the bells of the church. And we had a park. In that park, all these kids, we would play, and we found love and everything. Mm-hmm. And I lived here in the Dominican Republic for 20 years before I entered the convent. Just before I left, in my senior year, the dictator Trujillo was killed. It happens that my father was also involved in the intellectual planning of this. And so it was very hard. In fact, at one point, my mother went to my father's brother, who was then Secretary of State, and she said, if you want to see your brother alive, take us out of here. So sure enough, they sent my father to Chile. As
Who's they? Who sent him to Chile?
The government. Okay. My uncle, who was Secretary of State, he was influential in sending. My father was a well-known lawyer, so Trujillo did not have any idea that he was involved in revolutionary activities. But anyway, we were sent to Chile. We lived there. And my next sister, was born in Chile. After a while, we came back and so on. So, but still, we still had a very healthy upbringing. No problems, you know. My mother was, as I said, they were very cautious. My parents were very cautious in not involving us into the political upheaval. Yeah.
Were you conscious of it, though? Did you have some knowledge of what was going on?
Later on, when I was already a teenager.
Okay, but not so then.
I was listening. I was getting very involved in social justice. And I would hear through, what is it, that radio, ham radio?
Ham radio, correct.
Yes,
correct.
I used to listen to Castro I was very impressed by Fidel Castro coming down in Cuba. He lied to all of us. I thought that he was coming to get rid of the dictatorship in Cuba. He had a rosary around himself. I was a very religious person at that time. I thought it was fantastic. I thought that there was an answer to our dictatorship here. And I was very involved in that. However, soon after that, I realized that all of us realized that he was a fake, that he was actually bringing communism into Cuba. So that I didn't like. After the death of Trujillo, there was a great influence of the communist movement here in Dominican Republic. I joined with Jesuit priests in learning more about the social doctrine of the church. And I said, well, the answer to communism is the social doctrine of the church, because the church is not communist. So with some friends, about 3 or 4 of us, we started a radio program.
Oh.
We were very lucky that one of the major radio stations gave us time several times a week. And during that time, we would talk about the social doctrine of the church, but we would also talk about those who were conspiring against democracy. So at that time, I was already at university. I would go and, in a clandestine way, to the meetings of the communist students at the university to listen to what they were saying, so that later on in radio, we would tell on them. Well, we found ourselves several times in deep trouble, because at one point, some of them came to the radio station, and while we were there live, we didn't record at that time, it was live, they were showing us their guns and saying, well, we're British here, but we were able to get out of that. So, yes, I became, even before Trujillo was killed, I became very aware of the situation. And but my father would not tell us what he was involved in.
Did you ask him?
No, because there was no reason to talk about it. Besides, you couldn't speak freely because the help in the house could very well be planted. So we were very cautious in not having conversations when the help were around. Mm-hmm. And when things on the television were very tough, my mother would turn off the television because my father would get agitated. But anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. But now back to your family. That's a very political thing and had a bearing on your upbringing for sure. But you had a brother, you had a sister?
Yes, and a younger sister.
Okay.
My younger sister came 15 years later.
Oh.
It was very funny because my mother was already 39 and she had a difficult pregnancy. She had to stay in bed most of the time. So I said to her, I was already, as I said, 15. I said, Mother, I'll take care of this baby. So sure enough, that little girl was mine. And my mother would not, I loved taking my sister for a stroll in the park, not too far from where we lived. And my mother would say, do not do that. You never get married. People are going to think that you're married.
Smart mother.
Yes. Yeah, but anyway, right now she's a lovely lady. She is actually, right now she's in Michigan visiting her daughter.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Very wise coming to Michigan.
Well, I was there a few weeks ago and couldn't stop by the mother house because of the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how did you, who was influential in your early life that perhaps you had a sense you wanted to enter the convent?
Well, the nuns. I went to Colegio,
Okay.
The school that the nuns built here. And it was interesting because these women were very different from the religious women that I knew, especially from Spain and other places. They were so super strict. Our sisters were happy. They had a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
They had different personalities. It seems like they were not cut off with like a cookie cutter.
Okay.
They had criteria. They helped you think, and their prayer life was interesting. So I think it started there. In fact, when I was in 6th grade, I was already talking about entering the convent. Not that I stuck to it. I had several boyfriends, and all very different.
They didn't see
lifestyle.
They didn't see you with the stroller and the baby, huh?
That's right. I kept saying, no, I'm going to be a nun. But in the meantime, I had a boyfriend, and then I had another boyfriend. Yeah. But yes, it was the nuns. And one in particular, well, several in particular. Mary Phillip was one. And also, can't remember her name right now.
A lot of them are over there at the very difficult time with Trujillo, and they got in trouble too. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the day I was a senior in high school, toward the end, May, when Trujillo was killed, and it was that night that they came for Bishop Riley that was staying at the Colegio, and several of the sisters were hurt by they were shooting at the floor. They killed one of the dogs and so on.
Yeah.
And the ricochet of these shootings even hurt some of the sisters. That same night that Bishop Riley was taken, that same night Trujillo was killed. It was the morning after this that I was getting ready to go to school. I used to take my bicycle to school. My father said, "You're not going to school today. You're not going." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, he got the family into his studio, and he said, Trujillo was killed last night." And I said, "How do you know?" He said, "I'll let you know in due time." But anyway, and after his death, we were persecuted. Several people were killed.
Oh my.
And when they finally got the list of the people that were involved, my father came home and he said, "We are disappearing." So he sent my brother, my sister next to me, and myself to a place with some family. And my mother, my younger sister, and the chauffeur,
okay,
they went to someplace else. I don't know where they went. But that same night, thank God, there was a coup d'etat. And, that was the end of it. But I think they would have found him. One of the father of one of my friends, my classmates, was in jail because he was more involved in the process. So we didn't have a prom. The nuns just gave us our diploma. Fun times.
So it was kind of like our pandemic over here too. What the kids couldn't have proms, they couldn't have dances, they couldn't have games and graduations, but not quite at the cost of yours, right?
No, yeah, that's
a little
right.
more dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so then you wanted to become a nun. Had you ever been an Adrian? Did you ever make a special trip? No?
No. In those days, people didn't fly. When we went to Chile, it was a two-propeller plane that took to Chile. You can imagine. So, yeah, no, we were not the traveling family. That is very modern. No, I didn't. I wanted to enter the convent. But my family was not in favor of it. Okay. And my father wasn't. So I kept saying that I was going to go, and so they humored me, and I wrote to Adrian, and Adrian sent me all the information. I filled all the papers. I went to all the doctors and everything. And but I needed to have it signed and notarized. So I went to my father's office and I said, Dad, you know that I'm entering the convent. He said, yeah, oh yeah. I said, you need to sign these papers and have it,
notarized.
Sealed, notarized. He said, oh yeah, he did it right there, da-da-da. And I said, okay, I'm going to take the letter to the post office. He said, never mind, I'll send the secretary to do it. He never did. He never did. In the meantime, I have a cousin in New York that she invited me to spend some time in New York with her. And my father said, why don't you go to New York and have a good time? Have a little vacation. And it was supposed to be like a month in New York. And I said, okay, so what about the convent? He said, we'll talk about it when you come back. So I figured that he was not going to let me go. So, unbeknown to him, I went to the travel agency. I changed my ticket to one-way ticket to Michigan, to Detroit. And in the meantime, I asked the nuns to help me because I needed a permanent visa before I left. Michael Elise, Elisa Doherty, I was going to say, she was my sponsor. She and I went and had an appointment with the ambassador. And we explained to him what I was doing. And he said, okay, fine. Give me a month. You'll have your permanent visa. So for a month, I had to pretend something because I was supposed to leave right away. And so I kept saying, my father kept asking, are you leaving? When are you leaving? I said, oh, Dad, it's winter time. And I order a coat and it hasn't arrived. And the coat hasn't arrived. And the coat hasn't arrived. In the meantime, my mother found a coat that a friend gave her. And I had all my stuff. Yes. So then I had everything. I had my visa. I went to my aunts and I said, I don't think I have enough money. I think I had to pay dowry. But I have an idea because they haven't sent me anything. So then they gave me money. The day before I was supposed to go, my mother said, if you don't speak with your father, you're going to be in trouble. So I went to his bedroom where he was and I said, Dad, I'm leaving tomorrow. He said, oh, yes, have a good time. I said, Dad, I am not coming back. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I changed my ticket and I am going on to Detroit. I'm going to spend 2 days in New York and going on to Detroit. And he said, you cannot do that because your visa does not allow you to stay there. And I said, I have my permanent visa. He said, you did what? Needless to say, he was so mad at me. He didn't speak to me for a year. He didn't go to the airport to say goodbye. But and so anyway, a year later, for my...
You know what, before you go on, Rosa, just answer me this. What was it that you made a decision to go to the convent? Now, you had other sisters that you weren't as impressed with them as you were the Adrians. But what was it about the Adrians that made you, that said that's where you wanted to go and that's where you wanted to live your life, or how you wanted to live your life?
As I said, the women thought they had criteria. They decided, they make decisions.
Good.
When the nuns came down here, they did not want to have chauffeurs. They said, why do we need a chauffeur? We can drive ourselves. That was the first time that people down here saw women driving, and they were in a habit. And I said, my mother was very much that way. My mother was a very avant-garde woman. And when the sisters came to this country, he said, you're going to have your education with them, because she was very avant-garde. My father wasn't. He was like a lawyer, a little more strict. And yes, although the nuns gave me a hard time, believe it or not, my first encounter with it was not my father not wanting me to be a nun, but some of the sisters. Why? Something that I did not know. I excelled in everything in school except academics, because I did not know. In those days, nobody knew, but I was extremely dyslexic. So learning, reading was excruciating. So obviously my grades were not very good. And I remember one nun telling me one day, oh, you'll never be a nun, not with us. Look at your grades.
Oh, my.
And that was in my freshman year. And I said, what about my grades? She said, listen, we are women that go to school. We go to college. We are professionals. And look at you. And I said, but I want to be a nun. I don't want to be a teacher. And she said, well, geez, that's not the idea. So I said, oh, okay. So I went home. At the end of the school year, I was going through the Spanish track. Very good track, by the way. We had English track and Spanish track.
Okay.
And so at the end of the year, I said, well, I want to be a nun. I started in the Spanish track. I did not do very well. So I went to the school. I said, I want to begin again. And they said, why do you want to begin again? I said, I want to begin my freshman year again, but in the English track.
Okay.
I said, I need some of the language and so on. And so, yes, although I didn't graduate with great honors, but it was passing grade. So the nuns at the end, they said, okay, hey, send a woman in, what can you do about it?
My, I did not know that about you. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So anyway, you got on the plane and you got to Adrian.
No, I didn't get, yes.
Well, however you got there.
Yeah, eventually. I went to Buffalo because one of my early teachers, Augusta Marie, she was one of ours, and she entered the cloister. So I went to visit her in the cloister. And the cloister nuns wanted me to stay in the cloister. I said, no. I have it that I'm going to Adrian. So I got to Detroit. Mary Phil was the principal at Rosary High. I stayed there, and she said, well, did you bring your outfit? Because in a couple of days is the entry day. I said, what outfit? Didn't you get the information, all the things you needed to bring? I said, no. So she called Adrian, and she said to Margaret Phillip, I have here the girl from Dominican Republic. And they said, well, we haven't heard from her. So in a nutshell, they said, well, one of the postulants had to go home because she had to help her mother. And we'll send you her trunk with all of her stuff. And sure enough, we were the same size and everything. So there it was. and I entered the convent on 2nd of February.
Oh, right in the middle of winter.
It was a terrible, terrible winter. And it was a horrible entry into the Adrians because they brought me from the back through the trunk room, which is the basement. I said, oh, Lord, if this is a convent, this is horrible. But anyway, what a difference once you see the
campus.
The mother house.
Yes. That's a very interesting story. So now your ministerial involvement, you basically were in Florida, a couple of times in Puerto Rico, and then 6 years in leadership. Tell us a bit about a couple of your ministries.
Well, my first ministry was in Florida. Know that I was sent to mission a year and a half since entry. I did not have a total control of the language. So suddenly I am teaching 3rd grade with 48 kids, boys and girls. Had no idea. I did not know how to teach. Some of the sisters were helping me and so on, but I was pathetic. That was also the year that we had civil war here in Dominican Republic. I didn't hear from my parents for a long time. All that came crashing down. That first year was so bad that at the end of the year, I said to myself, just like, Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, I will never be hungry again. I said to myself, I will never be a bad teacher again. It doesn't pay.
No.
So then I started heavily on learning how to teach. And well, that was then in Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Rico. The kids were wonderful. I was in the junior high, more my style.
Did you teach in Spanish over there?
In Spanish and also English.
And English, okay. Yeah.
I started a number of programs for the little ones to learn English, special English labs and so on. And we also had theater productions with the high school. It was a grade school, high school combination. And it was great. We had The Wizard of Oz, The Sound of Music, Midsummer Night's Dream, and so on. It was a lot of fun being in Puerto Rico. I still get in touch with me still. So many. Then, of course, my work in the Mother House in the General Council was wonderful. Why? Because I was able to know the sisters better.
Right.
Having been in the South for so long, now I was in touch with women that were from all over, listen to their stories. And more so because that first winter, I fell in ice.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. Okay, yeah.
I broke my patella. So I was confined to Maria, to the health building. And it was the best thing that happened because then I was right with them, those who were suffering, those who were dying. I learned to say goodbye to women dying. Never seen that. I learned to kiss them, hug them before they died. In fact, all through that period of the 6 years, for me, it was more of a pastoral work among the sisters than the administration. The administration was fine. Having been in administration myself many years. But the joy was the sisters. And being with them, in the threshold of life was a gift. Yeah.
And it was very obvious, Rosa. You were a treasure on that campus, and your approachability and your love of our women, of us, was very obvious, I think, throughout the congregation. I kept thinking, how did you get elected if we didn't know you? I mean, because you were in Florida a long time. Yeah. I don't even think I knew who you were, and we were in Florida at the same time. But
yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
What is it? I heard somebody said that it was the election of the what type of horse that you talk about? Dark horse or something? Because people came. I don't know. I was elected in the first round.
I know. Uh-huh. I know.
And I said to myself, this must be crazy. But anyway, some of the women would come to me and say, why don't you say something? Because I never heard your voice. Well, before the election,
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
were talking with the sisters and so on. Talk to me, say something. I don't know you. Yes, the wild horse, something like that. The dark horse came. But
Yeah.
I don't know, the Holy Spirit, I suppose.
Right, definitely. One of the questions I think I have in those list of questions was a transformative life experience that you've had. Well, listen to your upbringing. My gosh, that in itself was transformative, I'm sure. And then being on our general council, and the gift you brought as you traveled around the congregation was wonderful. So that had to be a great, and I'm sure when you're teaching those little kids, you probably love them, just like you love that little sister of yours. What a gift.
Eventually I loved them. At the beginning, I was scared of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school with only women, and so suddenly I have all these little boys, and I don't know how. But
Very good. Where do you think the Spirit is? Oh, tell us what you're involved in right now. That's important. Why are you back in the Dominican Republic?
I was invited back to work on vocations. And guess what? I have done everything. At the beginning, when I came here, I went to every single parish in the Archdiocese. I spoke, I distributed leaflets, I stood outside the churches, talking with people. I talked, I explained things from the pulpit, all these churches. And guess how many people were interested? 0. So I said, oh, okay, well, this is it. Mm-hmm. What do I know? What do I do now? So it was that my sister, the one next to me, she said, they call me Maria Rosa here, my birth name. I only use my religious name, Rosa Monique, when I am going to give a talk, a course.
Okay.
But she said, Maria Rosa, many people here are interested in the faith. Why don't you teach them? Because I know you teach. When I was a teacher in charge of the catechist formation of the Archdiocese of Miami, so we taught many courses and so on. So I said, yeah, well, how do I go about it? She said, well, I don't know, let me see. And talking with a friend of hers, she said, my sister is here, and she's a teacher, she's a theologian, and she could teach. She said, really? So she got in touch with me, and she said, can you teach us? And I said, yes. Why don't you get a group? And she did. There were about 12 of them, and they came here to our convent. And in our convent, we don't have sofas or chairs like that. We only have rockers that move around. And so we would make a circle with a rockers,
walking chair.
And yes, and I would sit in front of. I brought a big television precisely to do that, and I would teach from there. And from one group, I went to the second group, third group, fourth group, fifth group. And then talks and courses in different places in the archdiocese and outside of the archdiocese. And suddenly the pandemic. So then I said, okay, back to zero. What do you do now? And some of my students said, well, Rosa, why don't you do the teachings through Zoom? And I said, through what?
It's now your best friend. Yeah.
And one of them had to come with all her paraphernalia and set it up for me. And I said, okay. So then I started offering some of these courses online and developing others. And it has been very successful because in a particular course, I could have 30, 40, 100, 200. I have given workshops, not workshops, mostly conferences, days of reflection. Right now, next Monday, I'm beginning a course with not my Zoom. My Zoom only goes to 100. With somebody else's Zoom, because there are more than 400 people line up for that course.
Oh my! What's the course?
Foundations of Catholicism. See,
wonderful.
It's one of the courses I give because here in this country there is a lot of evangelism, and many of our people confuse the principles of evangelism with the Catholic doctrine. And so this course is very enlightening. It's very lovely. You know, people love the course. So that at least they will begin to know their faith. And there are other courses I give, for instance, the Jesus of History, the Ten Commandments, the Beatitudes, the Sacraments. It's God in different forms and shapes and angles and so on, a number of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Because I'm here sitting in my office, as you can see.
Well, let's hope that this will get out because it does go on YouTube, you know. Do you have some words of wisdom you'd like to leave with us about? I know there's a lot more to your life, but just in general. I mean, you're a very gifted woman and you preach in many different ways.
Well, I tell you what, there was one question you sent me that struck a chord here. What do you think, or what do you think when you're having some challenging times? There is a thought that carries me through times like that. When adversity strikes me, I usually say, well, Rosa, that's the manual for today. Deal with it. And I tell you what, an example, not too long ago, I was involved, in fact, I am still involved with a group that is trying to preserve the Hispaniola hawk. It's a beautiful hawk that has, I think the wings expand nearly 6 feet. It is golden, and it has been dying because of some worm, they call it a white fly that gets into the little chick's wings and eventually kills them. So they are trying to eliminate the problem. So they invited me one time to go up to this area, it's in the mountains, to see it. And I went up there, and I like hiking because one of the things I like a lot is hiking and going to the mountains. And so I went up there, and it was wonderful. I even have a picture with a little chick hawk. They bring them down from the nest, and they spray the nest, and they bring the chick back. The mother hawk doesn't mind. But anyway, on the way down, I slipped in a mud, and I broke my left wrist. Suddenly, I am going down the mountains, very sick, and my hand hanging. So then, immediately, I said, Rosa, this is the menu for today. Deal with it. That helps me tremendously because immediately I didn't feel sorry for myself. Mm-hmm. I said, this is what happened. This is what I had to deal with. Well, I had to deal with it with many months because I had nails and I had all kinds of stuff to put it together. But every time I felt a little down, I said, deal with it.
Deal with it. So let's end with that. Just deal with it. And I think that's what our women and our over on our campus are trying to say to themselves every single day. You know, just deal with it. This is it. So Maria Rosa, I see that on there. Maria Rosa, Rosa Monique. Thank you very much for your willingness in your busy schedule to spend some time with us so we can get to know you better. And maybe sometime you'll come back over to this neck of the woods and do some of your preaching, whatever. But in the name of the congregation, thank you for the gift you are in the ministry and your continuing preaching and the charism and the love of Dominic to all those who you meet. You are very special. I hope you realize that. So thank you. And your father, he probably had a hard time dealing with you. Oh, before we close, I know you lost your dear little friend, Alaska, but didn't you have another one, another little dog?
I have another Alaska. It's bright and beautiful as the first one. Yes. He's a companion here.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you. God bless you. And you'll be seeing this in a few weeks or a month or so. Okay?